And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne. Right along here with Ransom Godwin, spinning you through a Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight, Revolution Radio. Well, are you ready for another 9/11? Because it seems like so many strange things to bend the reality of humans on this planet is about to take place again. So many pieces of random information coming in. I just had to write them all down over the last day or so. So tonight's episode is the next 9/11 that our world's about to experience. Is it going to be an asteroid or something perceived as an asteroid, man-made, maybe natural? Who knows what they could do with the technologies that's 50 years ahead of what we see in the current world. Now, the random number generator, if you remember that, and around 9/11, the random number generator just started spiking. Well, it is spiking again, just like it did in 2001. And we want to talk a little bit about prophecy tonight, the emotional impact. So we're going to gently eke ourselves into this, because it could be anything: the death of the dollar, a CME, asteroids. Imagine if an asteroid impacted on the planet, something very large that just wiped out cities. That would freak people out. And then another one came in, boom. We got the Panama Canal that's closed up pretty much. They're going to be for the next 10 months. Ships are going to have to unload at 40%. We're looking for $6 to $8 gasoline in America just quickly. We're about to get an oil embargo upon us. If you don't know what that is, look back to the 1970s. So all these things are happening at the same time, and a lot of remote viewers who spoke with one of them today are picking up on these events here. And then we'll come into 2025 as our planet spins in front of the sun. And we also could take some bolides, because all the gravitational bodies will be behind us in the solar system as we get to this planetary geometry. That only occurred once in 79 AD. And you know what's so interesting? If everybody wants to join along for a fun fest right now, I'll take you to a website called The Planets, plural, today.com. This is a super simple website, The Planets, plural, today.com. It simply shows you the electromagnetic connection between planets. If the planet you're looking at is turning bright pink, it is connecting electromagnetically with another planet. So you'll see which one they are. Now, this week, suddenly, all four of the gas giants are intercoupling on their magnetic fields, which will intensify through the apex of 2024, October. Now, it's interesting that we're getting all these earthquakes and crazy earth changes and 3 years of rain, at least 2 times so far in just days across the planet. I think there's actually 4 locations that experienced 2 to 3 years worth of rain in just a day or two. The amplification and the uptick has begun. So you have to think, if world government, how would you deflect away? This is the kind of things we wanted to talk about. So Ransom, super stoked you're here tonight. I know there's going to be just endless conversation as always. But what are you feeling? What are you hearing out in the ether about large events inbound?
Well, I don't know. It's like they're shoving it in your face what they're going to do. I mean, what's going on in the South China Sea right now? You see, like I predicted, I talked about this before on the show, that I thought, North Korea and probably even South Korea and Japan will be joining a newly formed Asian Union because it's in their best interest because of their location, not necessarily because of their politics. But just for survival. If the United States and the People's Liberation Army went to a kinetic warfare, which is in really the best interest according to the plots and plans laid by mice and men there, the world elite have plans, and the Communist Chinese Party have similar plans that mirror that. The only difference being, who's going to be sitting at the head of the table. And I think that they're going to force some kind of kinetic warfare between, and it's in an area that, we've mapped out and thoroughly had warfare in, which is the Pacific Ocean. And then you have on top of that, the other side of it, which will engage. It's the makings of World War II almost exactly. The reasoning or the I don't know. I'm not going to call it quite a false flag, but a lot of historical nuts out there know that the people warned the president and the U.S. intel that the Japanese fleet was incoming and going to bomb Pearl Harbor, and they did nothing. In fact, weirdly, all of the old ships were the ones that were attending there in Pearl Harbor, all lined up in a row, ready to be destroyed. We needed America to join that. We needed to sell the idea. And it wasn't very hard. All you have to do is tell Americans, like on 9/11, that someone somewhere attacked us. And people are willing to sign up and die for it. People are willing to back up ideas that are clearly insane. They're willing to let people lie about it because, they feel it's the patriotic thing to do if we got attacked. And that's been going on. So I think that we're ripe for another one of those. Morale is at an all-time low in most Western countries, and I think that's absolutely by design. The craziness you see with the cultural battles and geopolitical stances of certain nations choosing ideas that are they know that people like in Africa and Southeast Asia and other places are not going to accept. I mean, they don't accept them now. So there's a major culture clash happening as well as all of these other things. And the elite seem to be using all of these straws in anticipation to drop one really big straw down and reset everything. And I've been really thinking about it. All the technological steps necessary are in place to do an actual reset. And when I say an actual reset, I mean people gone. What you think of as civilization now, the ideas that we have, the, kind of ancient loyalties and different things that form the way people think of the world, they're about to erase all of that. And they're going to because, well, they have the technology to do it now. We can do boom, boom in a few small areas. We can reduce the amount of food over a decade or two. And at the end of that, we are technologically prepared to use AI, robots, and genetically engineered entities to replace humans. And those people will have no loyalty to parents, no loyalty to nations. They will be a complete corporate entity, so to speak. And they kind of put that right in our face. And we see the reflection of the reality in other things. So it's not really a sci-fi thing. Fertility and the ability to have children in the Western world, or you could even say the technological world, because the Western world indeed is, except for, places in Asia, are technological marvels. We have them all over the place, but the Western world is in shambles now. And it seems like they're trying to pull the plug. All of the oldest, buildings and different things that are associated with civilization, they're about to go with time. Everyone knows that they're building these giant mega cities. I mean, look at places like Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Dubai. All of those places really put to shame any city in the Western world as far as new architecture and building of new buildings and things like that. That's the future in one hand, but at the same time, these corporations merged with government entities, the epitome of both communism and the idea of fascism, have been entrenched in the way things work. So they have to solve this dilemma of national identity, and the way that I think they're going to do that is with one last big boom, one last big war to scare everyone, to reduce the population, to set everything in place for a new technological era. And there's a saying, what is it? If there's enough doves, there's peace amongst raptors. Right. And that's what they have right now, because all of the hunting is done towards kind of the doves or the sheeple, however you want to put it there. And they're setting it all up. So we're looking at right now, and in the short term, much less the long term, some drastic changes coming this winter. And you see the preparations for it. They're already proposing lockdowns, mandates, etc. And if you remember, when the first kind of go around happened, just me and the way I think about the way that these people in think tanks think, it would be smart of them if they really, pushed an idea and then turned out to be wrong on purpose, so that a certain demographic of people that are critical thinkers and think for themselves, maybe a little paranoid, and rightfully so, judging from our history, they could get all of those people to disregard a second wave of a similar thing, and this time being fatal. All of these things could be happening at the same time, especially the war and 2.0 of the it could be anything. They could pick a new thing. We constantly have new strains of things coming out. It could be bird flu. It could be swine flu. They have lots of letters that they could recombine. And now that we're finding out what's really going on, slowly through the headlines, they're leaking the truth, even though most of those conspiracy theorist type people had already nailed it. And they were right. And, we keep getting proven over and over again that government, through either ignorance, incompetence, or straight up design, are doing the opposite of what citizens of any place need. You could take Hawaii for an example, and no one can argue the fact that the people that disregarded government's instructions are the people that are alive today, unfortunately. And, what if there is something that they know about? We know, I bring this up constantly too, an asteroid or, a bolide is very likely to happen because, well, let's face it, it's happened over and over again, periodically, to the Earth, Mars, every place we look out in space. We brought that up last week. Something smacked into Jupiter that made an explosion the size of Earth. So even, if you dropped a couple of tungsten rods from space, I don't think anyone on the ground could argue, or even if they did, it would be put in the realm of 9/11, flat Earth, and all of the other conspiracy theories and aliens. And by the way, speaking of all this, I wanted to get your take on the paper mache looking alien mummies that they put out in Mexico, almost seemingly trying to destroy the idea of ufology in one swoop, to make the whole world snicker at the idea. Because I think, they want to make sure if they do present this idea to humans, they're in control of it. And you mentioned blue beam. There's various ways that they could trick human beings just in our technological realm now. And we've talked about it before. Now that they're making pig chimeras and, all kinds of different chimeras they know that they can do. They've made the embryos between China and other places, have gone ahead and crossed the line and just to see what would happen. And, well, they can mix anything now. So we are in that time where they can make a entity, as they put it, not me, an entity, and then put it in some new technology. And I don't think the average Joe could tell the difference between an alien and something that was created, in Area 51 or the Wuhan lab or something like that.
Yeah, and who knows what they're putting splicing together in the labs. Remember Dolly the sheep, and they told us, no, it's only going to be one sheep. Yeah, that was probably the prototype they'd been working on for 30 years and already had the science perfected when they unrolled Dolly out there for you. And you could take that a couple of ways here. Think about if they used Project Bluebeam, and it wasn't, let's not say it's a fake alien invasion, even though aliens are everywhere, from the United States to Mexico, it doesn't matter, Brazil, everybody. Why is it that all governments across the planet are coming out and saying, look, aliens, we got tons of alien stuff, technology, retrieved remains, all these videos and all the military reporting on it and da-da-da-da. So why now? That's the whole question. Why now? Because think about it. If there's an asteroid that came in, and let's say it was tungsten rods, with Bluebeam up there, so many people are focused on the fake alien invasion because Why has that been planted in our minds for so long? And now all of this alien stuff comes out. So just the logical person who's looking off mainstream media is going to try to put those two together and say, the blue beam. Oh, and look, they're talking about aliens everywhere. They're getting ready for the alien invasion. Well, what if they're going to be using blue beam for nothing more than a smoke trail from behind the tungsten rods? What if that's all it's used for? And then, how convincing would that be? Because even if you're standing there, you're going to see the smoke trail go over you, or the apparent smoke trail. And, that could be tungsten rods. It could be very well man-made, although appeared as an asteroid coming in. So imagine if it wasn't one, because a lot of times, for those of you out there, asteroids, when they come in, they break apart in the atmosphere, and then there's one, and then there's two, then there are three. And a lot of times when they're in space, they're traveling in just like dozens of smaller pieces together with the main piece. Now, what happens if a larger, medium to larger one comes in, but there's 30 of them together? Like we talked about a couple of programs ago, when NASA accidentally smashed into, I forget what the asteroid name was up there, and they broke it into about 30 pieces, all of which, if they were to hit the Earth, would just be, it would make, it would be, I wouldn't say devastating for humanity, but people would wake up and be like, whoa, we can't let that happen again. We're getting into a space defense program. Nothing about space programs that they might have right now, off-planet entities. If you had an electrogravitics craft, you could put 50 feet thick of lead around your craft and blast through the Van Allen radiation belt, because it wouldn't matter. It's weightless. But if you're going to try to use some NASA scrimpy, 2-inch thick aluminum thing, that's not going to work using propulsion. As we understand, rocket fuels, it's not going to work. So what if it is a bunch of these asteroids come in, and they're actually tungsten rods? Imagine 30 of them coming in over a 3-day or 4-day period. The first ones are semi-large, enough to definitely make news. If it crashes, like in, say, we've all seen the videos, crash into Paris, a quarter of Paris is gone. Well, you got blue beam leaving the smoke trail behind, tungsten rods are landing, and then half of, name your capital city, gets taken out. Zagreb in Croatia, for example. And Europe gets pounded first. Then we come into day 2, and then instead of being 2 of them, there's 6. The next day, bam, 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 taking out cities or parts of cities. Not the whole city, just parts. Probably the parts that contain the oldest architecture in the libraries and the museums and these things that contain our history, to erase it at the same time. Now think about how convenient it is to try to wind all those together. Then imagine day 3 where there's 20 of them that come in. Then day 4, there's only 4. And then, okay, the meteor swarm has passed, but our planet would be pummeled. Can you imagine 30 cities getting rocked with tungsten rods? This is the kind of thing I envision, not a fake alien invasion. Because the planetary geometry, which I've been studying for so long, really in 2025, it could be a real thing. But prior to that, as we come into this April, we are going to get a small taste of whatever the universe, solar system, whatever you like to term that as, inside our bow shock, whatever kind of debris is there getting tugged into the sun and the 4 gas giants trying to make their square behind us. In April, the Earth's going to be out in front of the sun with all the gravitational bodies directly behind us, including the sun. We're going to be the only thing in front of the sun. This April it'll happen. But see, that's the thing. The squaring planets are not going to be at their maximum magnetic interaction or interlooping or interconnectivity, however you like to term that. They still will be very close gravitationally to a square with the sun in front, still with that trajectory of pulling everything almost in a straight line, straight through the front of the earth. So in my estimation, if something were to going to happen, let's say these rods from God's coming in, it would be around like March, April of this year coming in here in 2024. But then what's before that, Ransom? See, that's the thing, like I keep hearing about $6 to $8 gasoline, another embargo, the economic collapse, the arbitrage from Shanghai Gold Exchange to the COMEX. I mean, shoot, we could talk for half an hour just on the arbitrage opportunities of Shanghai is offering 5 to 6% more for the same ounce or kilogram of gold as you're getting or selling or buying in America. So anybody who is able to get physical gold or silver and send it over to Asia is going to make a killing on that. So generally, it's going to be people with wealth and money that can have access to commodities anyway that are going to be running this arbitrage. And then, as this thing moves forward, there's going to be, I heard there are going to be at least 8 in the beginning, 8 different areas for global gold pricing outside COMEX, outside the London Metals Exchange, outside Western influence, outside Western hands. So think about that. If there's 8 different exchanges all offering different rates, the opportunity for arbitrage amongst nations and, 1,000 ounces of gold, if you were to have that type of money, $200,000. What if you're able to get 1,000 ounces of gold? All you have to do, and then you make 6% on your money in a single afternoon. Like, 6% on your money, that's huge anyway for an entire year. But imagine having the access to have an airplane and go pick up $200,000 worth of gold and then fly it over somewhere else. And then, this seems to be a way that the BRICS nations are now going to siphon all the precious metals out of the Western hands. And in addition to that, while I talk about BRICS, a majority of the OPEC nations are now BRICS aligned. So those of us in America, please understand your history. And Ransom can tell us more about the history on this. The oil embargo is coming back to America. That shocks me. It scares me. And I'm going to get more petrol tomorrow. I'm buying, I don't know how many cans. And so this is why you should have a little extra money, not maxed out on your credit cards, extra cash laying around, because I'm going to go buy, not the 5-gallon drums, but probably the 30 gallons and go fill them up. It'll be good for a year. But by the time this whole thing's over, sheesh, man. So Ransom, can you imagine an oil embargo in 2023? Like petrol prices at $6 to $8 would be considered a bargain. I was talking to my dad, and he's got a lot of friends from business back. My dad's, old school, followed the corporate route, baby boomer, still knows a ton of people in high level business. And he said something, the most strangest thing. He came to help me with the wine vines out here and do some like weed pulling and put some mulch around them and thing, get ready for the winter. But he's like, David, what happens, do you think, if petrol goes to $25 a gallon? I was like, where did you hear that? That's not even on my radar, $25 a gallon. He goes, you know what? Do you remember when me and Mom took you and we had that old red car and we'd go wait in line for gas? I was like, not really. I was super young. He's like, well, there's another embargo coming. And he told me a couple people that he still knows. And I go, those guys trade oil, Oh, no way. And he's like, yeah, but they were talking about $25 a gallon oil or for petrol. And I'm like, $25. And I was thinking, I'm glad I had a couple ounces of silver in my hand. And I was like, you know what? If oil or petrol is $25 a gallon, the price of silver should be at least $150 an ounce, which would mean that same 1 ounce of silver, if your gas is $4 a gallon and you have a 25 ounce or $25 an ounce piece of silver, you can still get 6 gallons of gas for that one piece of silver right now. But if gasoline goes to $25 a gallon and silver is $150 per ounce, you're still getting this same amount of gasoline for that same ounce of silver. But see, those who are rooted in the U.S. dollar are going to get cleaned out cleaned out. Look at that. Yeah, U.S. crude prices top $90. It's not stopping anywhere remotely close to there. Those of you in the U.S., please, I take a deep breath when I say this. We are about to get an oil embargo against our country here. Now, I don't know how this is going to play out, Ransom. Maybe you have an idea. What do you think? Like an oil embargo, how would that shock the roots of the nation? Man, that would rattle the foundations of this country.
Well, yeah, it put a cease to everybody going places. It would put a cease to deliveries. But hey, they could run those auto cars, so they don't have to pay anybody, and they could save the money that they're paying extra for the gasoline and diesel to deliver foods to places. No, it'd be a nightmare if I'm not old enough to actually remember being in the gas lines in the 70s. But I remember everybody talking about it when I was a kid, when the gas prices went up again in the 80s, and they were worried and they were scared that it was going to get like Vietnam era gas lines and shortages. And the gas prices hadn't even skyrocketed right here. So and this is a really weird thing. So they haven't been, at one point in 06 to 2022, which is 666. They raised the price up to $120 a gallon. I mean, a barrel. And then it sharply fell. And then, we were talking about some low prices there in 2023 for a little while, where it went down to 66. But yeah, if you see this chart, this shows the last couple of years from 22 that it peaked out at 120. But this is the same graph. This is the cycle. We're going up to 90. And then, if there was an embargo, you could see that thing probably go up to $200, $250 a barrel for the United States. Yep.
Yeah. Can you click the all button on that? Because look, I remember when for those of you out there, oil used to be $8 a barrel. $8. That is called hyperinflation comparatively to oil prices. If you go to all, and take that way back. Look at that, look at around 1985 or something. If you go down to that low valley there, 1985 or whatever, you'll see, or 82, 85, yeah. Look at the lowest price in there. There you go. Drop it down off that trough, and you'll see it's around $8 a barrel. There you go. Oh, 1042, my bad.
Well, there's another little trough over here too. It's but still, this only goes back to 83 right there. That's as far as that goes back. But like I said, though, I remember people freaking out in the 80s because of one of those little tiny peaks on there compared to what it's doing now, where it triples, quadruples, and then almost 10 times the price from just years back. When I first got out there in the driving world, I went all over the place, but that was the days of gas wars and, 89 cent or 99 cent or maybe even 79 cent if you were a part of a club or had a gas card or something. And the gas stations would drop the price because the people across the street dropped the price. And you could go just about anywhere all of a sudden. And that is what they want to end. And think about it. If you're really wanting to start having world war and also lockdowns, mandates, and you want to limit travel, and you realize that you already tried the lockdowns and no one really listened, and they still did what they were going to do, because people tend to do their own activities regardless. You might want to do something like that, like have a shutdown, complete petroleum shutdown, and think about the stuff that Biden and all these people say, from their net zero junk to getting rid of fossil fuels. This is in the favor of the technocratic elite to reduce the population. And people don't get that. You can look at every graph. And when you see a graph tumbling that's associated with energy, growth, what you're actually seeing is disease, starvation, and death following those troughs. Because that's what happens when people can't afford energy. They can't afford to go places. They can't afford to work. They can't afford to deliver. Things like that happen. And then you see people starting to hurt. And guess what? If 75% of the population's not gardeners at home, then you're in a real situation, a real pickle as far as the nation. And we're looking at stuff like what was it, Argentina, I think it was? Yeah, I saw an article that said, here's one: U.S. contracts oil producers, refineries as gasoline price rise. And then there's the one showing the $90 a barrel already. But past that, you got all this war stuff. And then you got also Argentina with 125% inflation down there. So that, and you remember, this shows you how times change, that there used to be a saying, rich as an Argentinian. Or Argentine or whatever. You can't say that now. I mean, geez. And what is it that's doing that? It's socialism and communism and letting, basically criminals run the state, and then hooking up with these UN and world agendas that don't help the local area. And like I said, all across the boards, what we're seeing is the actual real preparation, not the threatening or bolstering or saber rattling. We're actually getting in position. So all this stuff's going to come and hit everybody at once. Sickness, war, limits on travel and food, and all of this stuff. It sounds far-fetched, but we've slowly watched it incrementalize into reality right now. But here we go. PLA's latest air and sea drills near Taiwan could signal surprise attack strategies. They have surrounded the
Ransom,
island.
could I throw something before you continue?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I lived in Taiwan, and one of the things that when I was living there, they cannot attack during the typhoon season, and 143 planes and 56 warships is a pittance. They have to get hundreds of thousands of troops, plus the tanks, plus the artillery, plus all that other stuff over this most ferocious channel. And if you go out to the Penghu Islands, which is right in the middle between like Xiamen and say Taipei, it is so windy there that people actually have to leave the island because the wind never stops and they can never get a moment of silence, and it will actually drive you insane. So people take time off the islands because they have to get to some quiet because the wind never stops. This is the channel. If you ever, Graham Hancock in the underworlds, they found those temples at about 200 foot in depth in water. During the previous ice age, you could walk from China to Taiwan. And in that little whatever depression there, they built several temples or whatever it was, 18,000 years ago, those people at the time. So this is the key factor here. If you're looking at the timing on this, there's been 1,000 reports. They will not attack during the typhoon season because there's no way for their forces to fully land 100%, because it could easily get cut off and only half the forces are there, and then a typhoon comes in and they need to stop the invasion. Like best case scenario is December, if you're going to look at a time frame, because September is straight in the middle of the typhoon season. Man, these typhoons get super intense toward the end of the season. So September and October, that's a no-go. November, there's occasionally an early November typhoon. December is probably, I'm going to call the earliest that they would even consider a full invasion. And I'm done.
Yeah, I don't think that they would be trying to invade with this anyway. What this is platforms to use drones. We're in a new age of warfare. They're not going to try to put boots on the ground until they've dismantled whatever defenses are there. And if you've been watching what they've got, they have a few Apache helicopters, they have some missile defense systems and some other stuff. They really don't have anything to put back any real invasion if it happened. And I'm sad to say, I don't think the United States would do anything. And the reason I think that is because during the Obama administration, we pulled out the fleet that had been there since 1952. So that was already a nod to China that we were going to give up Taiwan. And I think they know geopolitically that, the other countries that are in the area there, it's better for them to be on the side of China as far as not being attacked from behind for, we've already seen that roll out in Vietnam, how that would roll up, actually twice in Korea and Vietnam, and they turn into stalemates. So now that, the countries have decided to start realigning themselves, not only with trade deals, but with the currency system, but they're also doing that with militaries. And this is going to expand, and we can tell it is because we're already having the drone attacks from one country to another. Fire and fury, Putin's sub and warships blasted. in their little by kamikaze drones. Here's another one. Russia taking to battle practice with China, and you saw little Kim Un join the party and decided, hey, you know what? I'll be on your side. So it's like a repeat, literally a rerun, because they know how to run people's psyche. So we're just going to give them a World War II scenario, a fight in the West, a fight in the East, and these battles. People don't understand that whenever you have proxy wars or wars for no reason and the elite allow their countries to go at war, they're in no danger of being hurt by it at all. So when you want to thin out the herd, or you want to redesign the lines and any kind of treaty that you're not going to hear as a citizen, this is what you get. This is what we had in World War II, a complete redesigning of the map. Clash in skies, and this is what we're also seeing a trend of as we're baiting each other to see who will start it first, because I think they've already agreed that, if they do turn it over to a nuclear war, they're only going to hit pre-agreed on targets. People don't understand that elites work this way. They make deals of destruction. You can go back into, like back when the French and the English would fight. You got your cousin over there. They do this constantly. But now it's getting serious because they're ready for reorganization of everything. Emergency alerts on NATO territory as Russian drone attacks force Romanians into underground shelters. And then on the money front, like I was saying, everything seems like it may be going down the tubes. You look at other countries, they're desperate to get into a new monetary system. So those are also countries that are susceptible to changeover or, picking sides for their economic survival. But in the backdrop of all this, we can't forget that most of these systems that they're turning over everything to are AI ran. And that makes you scratch your head because literally the experts, like on this title here from the Daily Express, experts sound alarm over consciousness AI as they warned robots are evolving like humans. In other words, they have so much intelligence that it's only a matter of time. And this is just like you said with the alien thing, they milk it, they incrementalize it. It's conditioning to accept a certain idea. So whether it's fake or whether it's real, for all I know, there really is an extraterrestrial civilization in negotiations with Earth for some kind of outcome. And if we were on the losing end of that, evil as it might sound, the leaders of the world may actually sell us out and terraform our thing. And, with the idea, they may have given us this technology, don't worry about it. We can get rid of illness and all of that. And we'll just grow the babies in government factories. And that way, you can have to get permission from the government if you want to have a child, but you're not going to have it at home. You'll go pick it up. You'll get special permission from the state to own a child or to raise a child if they even continue down that course. Because the reality is they could raise them from little children to about 20 years old and have a standing army before anyone even realizes what's going on. And I wanted to get your take on this too, because I've been seeing a lot more push, like they're about to change over from the attack on CO2, because, let's face it, they got it down to 420 parts per million. And I think they know, along with us, that there's only a 200 parts per million range there before we're in extinction level, area with the air. And now we're talking about chopping down trees and doing all this stuff and these are all the things that absorb the carbon dioxide. And I was looking at this mathematical figure that this guy did, and he was talking about how all of the areas that they're trying to reduce carbon dioxide happen to be areas with like mangroves, forests, different stuff like that are absorbing more carbon dioxide than they say the countries are producing. So like with their own math, they're saying that nature is taking care of any problem that could or couldn't be. So now they're going to shift into something else. And this has to do with meat, I think, even though this article talks about methane just leaking out into the atmosphere. And this could be a cause of the termination of other ice ages. But it could also turn the earth hot, according to them. So it's another global warming type scare. But where methane comes from, besides frozen methane in the earth, ain't that part of what comes out of the cow when it takes a fart, and everybody jokes and laughs about cow farts, but they really are serious when they're trying to reduce the animals that seem to be a portion of the natural cycle of things. So they could just say everything is bad. It creates methane, it creates carbon dioxide, and you have to use all of this other stuff. So what really are they trying to do to the earth other than terraform it for some purpose? And I think that purpose is a complete reset, a restructuring of civilization. And I don't think people understand what reset, what extent they're going to go to actually reset it, because they're in a power position now to take complete control of all lands and seas on the earth. And actually, one last thing, and I'll shut up. With the events that happened recently, it's pretty obvious that one virus, no matter where its origin, can go around the world and affect 90% of the population.
Yeah, that wood sequestration thing I did, with Mike Adams about 2 weeks ago. I did wood sequestration talk and video. So here's the madness behind it. And really the kind of the level we're going to in terms of what Ransom just said about, we are definitely at a reset. So there's two takeaways from this. The first one is whatever species is inbound to step foot on this planet is very CO2 adverse. Whatever it is in its physiology reacts violently and in a negative way when it intakes CO2, whether it's through the skin. It doesn't have to be breathing, but through the skin or, whatever, respiration, that CO2 disrupts or bothers the cellular structure of these beings that are inbound here, hence the terraforming. So if they can limit it under 500 parts per million, the next species can just step in and it won't be, too much affected. If they can reduce it a little bit or slow the increase of CO2, great for that. But looking into the wood sequestration, this is how it works. And it's a double-pronged nastiness here. So Bill Gates wants to cut down 70 million acres. Now, the thought process is those trees grew up, they absorbed all the CO2 in their cellulose when they grew, but when they fall down after they die, 100 years, 200 years, whatever, 50 years, once those trees are decomposing on the forest floor, they release all that CO2 and methane back into the atmosphere that they absorbed during the life cycle. So what they wanted to do was cut these 70 million acres. 70 million acres. Some of our largest national parks in America are only 1 to 2 million acres. The entire farmland combined in America is about 100 million acres. That's for every farm that exists in America. And they want to cut down 70 million acres of trees buried underground. But here's the thing, these big pits, they're going to have to use some sort of liner in there. Now, this liner is going to have to be manufactured in a facility that's going to require fossil fuels, or require electricity. It's definitely going to be oil or fossil fuel based, because there can't be any permeability, and it has to be even gas tight on these liners for these pits. Now, I have a farm out here, and when we even just cut brush from like the edge of the creek or something, you end up with, 4 or 5 pickup truck loads in the back of debris over one day of cutting. And we have to burn it because it's just way too much. There's no way impossible. So, at the end of a super long day, we'll bust out the beers and then just start burning all that stuff. It's like throw it into a pile, and, you can't get it all at once. So it's like throw a few sticks. There's a few big ones, a few small ones, everything end up burning. And then we'd try to put it out early and spray it with water to get the charcoal from that, and different things that then we can add on the plants. Yeah. Don't let it, if you're going to have a fire, don't let it, there's many ways to control the fire. Don't let it go all the way to ash, put it out early, get the charcoal. Some of the bigger pieces you could save for later. Some of the smaller ones you can use also for like soil adjuvants and things for carbon inside there. Ash is going to raise the pH, but if you have just the black pieces, that's going to add carbon into. So you can, a lot of fruit trees like carbon, so you can put it around the the base of the trees and thing. So that's one thing they're looking at, is cutting all these trees and doing this. And then how many machines are you going to use? Because again, having a farm and cutting a fair few trees in my day here, wood is heavy. Trees will kill you in a fifth of an eighth of a second if you are not careful. You must give ultimate respect to a tree that is coming down in the forest, because that thing has a million ways from Sunday to hit and catch on the canopy and bounce back 8, 10, 12 feet. Like you might be standing near that tree and you let it go down and somehow it just kinks in the air and grabs on some branches and then, shoots back 10 feet. And whoever's back there, their rib cage is now 1,000 pieces of bone. Like, trees are no joke. I can tell you one thing, trees are no joke. There's more people get injured by cutting trees and doing field work and just like forestry stuff. Oh my gosh, it is so heavy, incredible. And they're going to need so many more machines to do that. That's the reason I bring up the point, is they're going to need more grappling arm forestry equipment. And then in Australia, and think about the road crews and all the machines and all the chainsaws, they're not going to be electric. Obviously, they're going to be running on petrol. Like, the amount of fossil fuel involved in this whole operation to sequester the CO2 from these trees, in my opinion, seems that it's like a zero. Because the amount of extra trucks and the transportation and the backhoes, and I'm not talking a small backhoe to clear a creek. We're talking like super giant construction site kind backhoes and dozers at everything. And then here's the most maniacal thing. After they cover the pits, they want to reforest the pit of the forest they just clear cut. Then they want to reforest the pit on top of it. I'm like, you guys are insane. A, the roots might puncture through your bed liner in there. And then in Australia, they're taking it a step deeper and a little bit more, I say strange, because what they want to do then is soak them in salt water to slow down the decomposition process. Because if you've ever seen those shows on Discovery Channel, they have the trees that are sticking up that have been underwater for like 100 years after they flooded an area for a dam. Like those underwater logging operations. So the Australians feel if they can put, 500,000 trees in salt water and let them soak it up like a sponge for, I don't know how long it would be, months at a time, then they could reload it onto a truck and then take that over to the burial pit. So you think about it. You're going to go into the forest, cut the trees, huge amount of manpower, resources, machinery involved. They're going to bring it down to the seaside. They're going to soak it in salt water, contaminate the water, whatever, and then they're going to move that again by a truck to another final destination to bury it in a pit. All right, and then here's the final one that really gets me. And okay, that's all. You can see it's it's a moneymaker. It is what it is. But there's this another company, I forget, Returna, I think is the name of it. You got to check my video out that I did. What they want to do is pump seawater out of the sea. And we're not talking about 1 gallon here. They're talking like million-gallon process at a time. They want to pull the seawater out of the sea, and they want to take the carbon dioxide out of the seawater in a chemical process, which will alter the chemical structure of the water. So then they'll need to add more acids back into it because they're pulling all the pH, the high pH carbon dioxide out of it. So then they have to rebalance the water chemically, and then they re-inject it into the sea with the idea that that water, since the CO2 is stripped out of it, will reabsorb CO2 that's in the atmosphere. So at the end of that, I never was really, and I'll tell you, Ransom, just from a personal thing here, I don't believe in the flat earth. I do believe in hollow earth because there's so many caverns and, openings within the crust of the planet. You'd almost have to be like really just naive to think that there's not just enormous amounts of empty space within our crust. I mean, the largest cave systems from Kentucky to Tennessee, whatever. Look at your biggest cave system in your state. Like that kind of stuff is under the entire planet, everywhere you go. So there's probably more empty space or equally as much as there is solid rock. So hollow earth makes sense because there's a huge amount of empty space. Flat earth, nah, not really. And another thing I never was convinced of until I did that report with Mike Adams I never, ever, ever believed in terraforming. I believed that there were things that were trying to poison humanity, but I never believed it was for another species until I did that report 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, you know what? This is not for humans. This is to take CO2 out of the atmosphere on purpose for another species that's coming here. And I'm just going to leave it there, man, because it's a little macabre and a little kind of weird for me to even talk about it as such. I don't know, man. We are definitely in strange times.
You know what's really messed up is it doesn't even have to be another species that's extraterrestrial. Like we've been talking, designer species are a thing of now. We can bring back species that no longer exist. And while they're playing with all these things, I've been really diving deep into AI, and I've been seeing the machines and what they can do. And I'm telling you, they don't really need humans anymore. They can take all of the existing machinery that exists now. This is not like some futuristic movie where they have to build all these machines to do stuff. The machines exist now. It's basically the machines you've been seeing. And, you pointed that out early. In 1996 is when they unveiled to the world that they could totally clone an animal, any animal. Now, what do you think they've been doing with that technology since they unveiled it to the world? Well, they pretend like they agree that they won't clone a human being, but who's to say that they can't get around those laws by making a human that's not a human, maybe less of a human, maybe only 80% human and 20% either designer or some other animal. These are all things in the realm of possibility. And I would put to you that if you really study it, you can find out that we've been making chimeras, all kinds of different stuff between what's going on in U.S. genetic labs down at the DNA level, just messing with that. And then other countries like China going to take the next step and actually making embryos of chimeras, half rabbit, half human, half pig, half human. The list goes on and on. So if you were going to create a new society and it would only take 20 years to make said society, you could use engineered human beings, so to speak, an entity that is used to a different atmosphere, requires less food. Maybe it even is more subservient by nature. But think about this. If you built the infrastructure to create massive waves of people in buildings, factories, and that kind of setup, how hard would it be to transition one single generation from anything to anything? In other words, you could have a human-like species, and then the very next generation, you could be growing little extraterrestrials in giant batches. It would only take one generation to replace the transitional generation. I mean, the things that they have the ability to do now is really scary. And if you really listen to what they're saying, they do have these plans. They have a transhumanist future where they will sit at the top of this artificial pyramid. And they don't care what kind of natural disasters, war, famine, disease, pestilence, any of that happens. That all helps them out. And the fact that we just happen to be in the right time for a population reduction and a plateau of just natural occurrences on how societies develop. So we're in a predicament, but how ugly is it going to be? And will you recognize it when you start to get replaced, or will the generation that's alive? And then we're all assuming that things will happen in our generation. They could be planning things for just, decades to come, the next couple.
Yeah, I sent you that video off Soho of all the CMEs. I'd seen something like this before. There's so many CMEs coming off the sun, they can't even track them because they're overlapping on each other. So with the space radiation increasing, the magnetic field intensity decreasing, strangeness all around in the solar system, think about if those chimeras are the replacement for humans. What if they are more subservient? I was on an interview with Mark Harman, and we went into the Goetia and a whole bunch of other stuff and talking about Sumerian texts and creation myth thing. Like, if you really take that literally, those interpretations from the cuneiform text, humanity is the human Homo sapiens sapien, as you understand right now, was a created species. Because the old one, like the Sasquatch that you understand, you might laugh at that, but that was the original DNA hybrid that was pulled from, because they couldn't get that one. It was so hyper intelligent that they couldn't dumb it down enough to be a worker slave. So they pulled DNA, included a little of their own, pulled from the what you understand as Sasquatch right now, Sabe, and they remixed and remingled, and we are the result of that. So that's the stories. If you go back some 400,000 years from an ancient civilization 7,000 years ago that's disappeared, that left, intact writings of the creation of how they understood humanity from that point forward. So where do we sit? You're right, Ransom. If we can do chimeras and create new things in labs, then humans won't be needed anymore. Because if there's things that will do robotics that can replace humans, then what would you need? You need a worker slave to get back in the mines to mine the gold again. We'll be right back. Many Ice Age Conversations. David DuByne, Ransom Godwin here.
America has had it good for a long time, but I have an uncomfortable feeling that this prosperity isn't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived a tax burden that reached a third or more of its national income, and yet our government continues to spend more than the government takes in. Today, 37 cents out of every dollar earned in this country is the tax collector's share, and yet our government continues to spend. We haven't balanced our budget. Our national debt is bigger than all the combined debts of all the nations of the world. The U.S. gold reserves have more than 8,000 metric tons of gold. That's a value of $400 billion of gold in our treasury, and most of us don't own an ounce. $1 in 1989 has the same purchasing power or buying power as $3 today, and it's getting worse. They have voices that say the Great Reset will be our acceptance of an undemocratic socialism. Another voice says the profit motive has become outmoded. It must be replaced by the incentives of the welfare state, a universal income. Or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 21st century. They use terms like the Great Reset, say things like the Constitution is outmoded and it's an antiquated document. They define liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. The full power of centralized government, this was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. That's why we must steer our own future. For the last 10,000 years at least, gold has rarely suffered from economic and political crises, as it has always been a stable. Gold is perceived as a symbol of wealth, power, and majesty. Gold has had an exalted position throughout the ages as a highly coveted, even worshipped material. That's why most every major civilization has collected and saved gold. Gold has maintained its worth and usefulness as currency throughout time and will continue to do so. Gold has an important economic role as a means of exchange should currency collapse, insurance that will protect you and your families against financial turmoil of any kind. ITM Trading is a precious metals company that has been in business for over 27 plus years, with a mission to educate and empower individuals to hedge against inflation, mitigate financial risk, and prepare for the Great Reset. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call, 866-834-1422, 866-834-1422.
That's some nastier food. Hi, I'm Chef Antonio with a quick question. What's in your food? Some of the foods these days have some pretty weird ingredients. Foods also have lots of different contaminants, from heavy metals to fungicides, pesticides, herbicides. Oh man, that's a lot of no good. Then we got the cloned food, edited food, fake food, and unhealthy foods of all kinds. That's not what mama was cooking when you were a little bambino. You want to know what's in your food. I know you do. Heaven's Harvest has Protein Booster Kit is the bolster of your daily emergency meal plan. Containing only essential proteins, beef, chicken, and eggs, stock up on vital amino acids and nutrients required to thrive in all situations. They got the fruits and vegetable buckets, the breakfast bucket kits, and for a You Health Food Nuts, they got an organics kit. Now that's knowing what's in your food. They even got the heirloom seed kit so you can plant your own food. Heaven's Harvest Heirloom Vegetable Seed Kit is a simple way to start storing seeds safely. Not sure what varieties are hardy, easy growers, which thrive and taste the best. They have taken the guesswork and time out of the process of seed saving. Now you know what's in your food because you grew it. Go to heavensharvest.com. You can save 15% at the checkout with code ADAPT.
Or are we not? Will you accept resurfdom? Or will you say no? It's going to be something like this. It's going to be a yes or a no choice for most of humanity. You can go right along with it, or you can say no. But as we start the second hour, I do want to thank Revolution Radio for allowing us to talk here. Because so many of these conversations are being stifled. I had a conversation just today with somebody who was like, yeah, they're starting, originally there was this type of, conversation you couldn't have. And if you go back, those of you who are around like 2015, 16, like Stefan Molyneux, and who else was around during that time, political show, talking about the changes. Most of them have been banned since. If you take that trajectory of 2016 to today, every voice that had real cool, like, was that Black Pigeon Speaks? That was a super good one. He was out of Japan. And everywhere you go, Milo, who was that? Milo also got banned off there. And, everybody that had something fun and interesting and kind of playful conversation to say about the real deal, let's start a conversation about it. You don't need to yell. You don't need to argue, throw chairs or whatever. Let's have a real conversation and inject a little humor in it to make it fun because it's so ridiculous. None of those voices are on like YouTube anymore. They've all moved off channel. And I do believe that's the way it's going to go as we continue and we move forward from this point, because if these earth changes are real, like I'm talking about, next year, I won't be here on the channels. It'll just, at that point, they're going to start reducing the amount of people that can talk about the real reason the electromagnetic changes are here. And it's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. So Revolution Radio allows us to talk and speak and have this conversation, and you all can join in on the comments for any of these areas that we are, broadcasting live tonight, like, for example, over on Rumble and the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast and Mountain High Time. Just interact with those that are on the comment boards with you if you want to, have a real conversation, because it shouldn't be censored there. You're just writing and typing thoughts. So consider a donation to Revolution Radio to keep them on air. Because free speech is becoming a fleeting glimpse of even what was enshrined in the Constitution. We had that right to that very First Amendment, that freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Those things were at the forefront of you have the right to say what you want and believe what you want. But obviously not. It's all lip service. And we're going to have to... I listen to, and I listen to people say, oh, we're going to have to fight to get the country back and take it back. We are so far past that. There's no taking anything back. You're living in the past if you're thinking that, and you're being blinded by not looking at the future. So how do we restructure is more the question, but you have to have a conversation on how you're going to restructure something that's been totally shattered and broken and bring it back from a remnant of what was to create the new. There's no going back. I was talking with somebody earlier today. Oh, well, Hungary, if we go travel there, it's going to be just like it was, it'll be like it was in 2018. It's cool. The Airbnbs are open. We can hit the museums and stuff. And I'm like, over in Romania, they went into the air raid shelters earlier today. And yeah, you're going to have the passport, COVID passports. And you Americans, including myself, we're going to have to get visas to travel to the Schengen zone starting January 1st of 2024. So this whole thing about, we're going to go back to 2019, it's going to be cool. We can just float and we can digital nomad and stuff. You're in a new world. That old world is gone. I think that song explained it so perfectly, new world an old soul in a new world, because that's exactly what it is. That old world is gone and it's not coming back. It's going to be reframed, restructured, rebuilt in a new fashion. But please don't get the hook in trying to save something that's already long gone. So Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us have our conversation tonight. I think I babbled too much, Ransom. Take it over. I was talking about just before the break, the minute the U.S. dollar is not any longer a gold substitute, the dollar, as you know, is dead. It's finished. It's gone. So that's the only thing keeping it intact right now. It acts as a gold substitute. But the minute that is gone, then you're going to see $250 per gallon gasoline.
I think they'll do that for years, man. They just have so many things to mess with people. It's like, sometimes I picture there's just these, they could be human, they not be human, being woo-woo there. I kind of play with stuff like that because, we see these things like the paper mache looking aliens coming out of Mexico, and it seems to me that there's a group of people that they go out of their way to set up things like this, and then like kind of fakeish stuff, so that if there was anything, Hollywood level or beyond, say government level, that was not as it really is, but something else, it's a fake thing, and they try to portray that something's happening. The difference in these two kind of ideas would be so dramatic that the people that really, look at those little bodies or whatever they were, I can't tell what that is. Like, maybe it is 1,000 years old, but if it was, I would assume that it's some kind of art piece where somebody was trying to depict something, probably even the Paracas people, if it's really that old and it really did come from Peru. But on the other hand, the same guy was caught, basically passing off stuff as fakes, because he's not a scientist. So, he buys into everything because he likes the whatever, but they keep doing these things. So if the powers that be actually put out a story, say, and whether it was real or not, this is the whole funny part. And we talk about, the separation of species, the possibility of speciation when you get a lot of cosmic rays and get bombarded by the sun. Robert Felix talked about that, but we actually see evidence of that happening, about the time of Neanderthal. We know now that Neanderthal lacked a gene that human beings have, and it may have been the only reason that we're here and they're not here, and only the hybrids between the species are the ones that remained, because they just, for some reason, couldn't absorb UV radiation, or at least that's a possibility. That's now an idea, and we know that gene that doesn't seem to appear in them. And matter of fact, human beings have a lot of stuff that's really bizarre going on, but that's because they don't teach real science to people. They have this idea that regular humans just walked out of Africa and then they turned into Asians, European types, Native Americans, etc., and they just mutated out of control for some reason. But for some reason, we're at a point right now in scientific education where one field is arguing with the other field. So in other words, the anthropologists are arguing with the geneticists that are saying, hey, no. It wasn't one group of human beings. It was actually, about 5, 6, 7. We don't know how many different human species and we have no idea where they evolved at or when, because, there's so little amount of fossil evidence for anyone. I mean, we know that there was this human being called Denisovan, but all we really have is like a little pinky bone that we got some DNA off, and we know that it's a species that humans mixed with, because Asians have about 2 to 4% in in their phenotype of Denisovan genetics. And when you go to Europe, you see the same thing, about 3 to 5% Neanderthal. And all over the world, these humans were mixing and matching. And for some reason, one main admixture species survived, and those other, you could call them archaic, not that they were more advanced or less advanced than the core species, but archaic in the fact that they all went extinct. So now when you fast forward to now, we know the magnetic field is collapsing. The sun's going through a cycle that repeats itself. And not only that, but the empire of human beings is going through a cycle. And the whole idea of the passage of time as linear beings on Earth, in other words, the precession of the equinox and the zodiac, which is entrenched in all literature, religion, artwork, etc., back to the beginnings of human beings creating artwork. We know that we're transitioning into that new phase, a new phase of unknown stuff. So we know the elites believe in it. We know that they've been waiting on it. We know that they, really involved themselves in the numerology and the dates. That's why things like, they use dates like 9/11 and other things. And, if anybody out there still believes that 19 Saudi Arabians on behalf of Iraq and Afghanistan flew planes into the buildings, I don't know. You need your head checked. I seriously, because there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence that goes in one direction. But then, we have all of these other things that get thrown out there and seemingly from the CIA. So I wouldn't put it past them to put a mass delusion on the populations, because things are looking like they couldn't get worse. But guess what? For every problem, there is a solution. So if they're causing mass starvation, war, pestilence, etc., on the other end of that, that they're going to offer some kind of solution. And that solution is a complete track and trace AI run system where they not only design human beings for human being safety. In other words, we could remove the aggression gene. We could remove, all kinds of stuff like that. We're in bizarro territory, but it's now a reality. So which, catalyst will they use? I mean, they don't even have to get that far-fetched, but if people stop believing their stories, they can get really imaginative with their new tech.
Yeah, they could. And on that same theme, I just sent you a link, and I couldn't believe that because, SOT.net is one of my go-to sites for the ancient history, because they always have the most, bizarro, where did you find that kind of article somehow? They got people around the world scraping different articles. This one comes out of the University of Toronto. New ancient ape from Turkey challenges the story of human origins, which it goes right into exactly what you were saying. And that's the reason I went over here to see if I could find something cool about the Denisovans, or, they found some new cave paintings 8,000 years ago, again, from Turkey area. So here, this new article comes out, says a fossil ape from 8.7 million years ago in Turkey is challenging the long accepted ideas of human origins and adding weight to the theory that the ancestors of African apes and humans evolved in Europe before migrating to Africa between 9 and 7 million years ago. Now, wait a second. That's the complete opposite of what we've ever been told. So suddenly they just find something new here. They found a face and a partial skull of this fossil hominin. You notice how they're not even calling it a hominid anymore. They've changed the nomenclature on that from, what's that? Andaluvius turcae. Okay, that's the Latin name for it. A fossil hominin, not a fossil hominid. So they're going further back and saying, wait, this out of theory is suddenly, wasn't Lucy the prime candidate to show that, everything evolved out of Africa? Well, now they're trying to flip it and say, whoa, hold on. That actually they were up in these apes exist. Where do apes exist? Europe. And they came down from Europe, and then and again, a migrating ape? Like what? There's about 4 or 5 things in this article here that make no sense to me. Now they're talking about migrating apes 8.7 million years ago. Do you realize how little influence another species would have on it? Why would you migrate if you had everything you need in your area within like 5 miles, 10 miles square? You had food, you had water, you got all the materials you need to build your house, or whatever structures, mating partners, the community, whatever. Why would you pick up and leave and then go some thousands of miles south? That makes no sense. Like, they're just migrating apes all over the place 8.7 million years ago. Like, what? Come on, man. I mean, how far can you take this, the switching of history? This is exactly what Ransom was talking about before, the obfuscation of history, bending timelines, rewriting history. And now this is confusing for a lot of people who've been taught their entire life that everything originated in Africa. And now suddenly it originated in Europe, but then these apes went to Africa, and the descendants of these apes that were migrating from Europe to Africa Lucy was a descendant of these. This is just staggeringly ridiculous. So I'll read another paragraph. Our foundings further suggest that the hominins not only evolved in Western and Central Europe, but spent over 5 million years evolving there and spreading through the Eastern Mediterranean before eventually dispersing into Africa. Now, if my simple math serves me right, and I'm going to use 100,000 years as an average duration between interglacials, meaning the other 90,000 years of that 100,000 years is locked in ice, where there were ice sheets down south of Switzerland. You're looking at what, 50 of those ice ages coming and going. Yet those apes are still chilling at the base of glaciers in Europe, just chilling. Oh, they finally moved to the Mediterranean, got better olives down there, got better red wine. So see, this whole thing, they don't put the ice age equation into these animals living up there. So when I read this, Western and Central Europe was under an ice sheet. You know that? Like, you're telling me apes are going to live in the ice? That makes no sense. So whoever put this article out and the members of the Department of Anthropology, you might have a conceivingly good story, but you actually need to look just at the last ice age boundary. And you'd probably think that, I'm sure it's not going to be exactly the same, the ice age boundaries, every single ice age, but it would be very similar to how far south the ice would push. So Central Europe was covered in ice, and they're saying that's where these things live for 5 million years. That's impossible, literally impossible. They would be, half a mile under ice if that was true. So I don't know, man. I'm going to leave it there because I look at this and just that, did the Sumerians, or should I say the Anunnaki, did they pull part of this DNA to create the Homo sapiens sapien? I don't know. But wherever you look, there's this strange history that's out there to bend the perceived timelines. This is just a confusion campaign, in my best opinion here. This is a confusion campaign. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, they do try to confuse people with timelines, but really the fact is we know that apes were all over the world, and actually apes, primates altogether, all of them, supposedly evolved in North America. And then, when times changed and things moved around, they found themselves supposedly in Africa is still the mainline story. But the problem is that, primates and monkeys and apes, all of them, have been all over Asia, Europe, and Africa. And, just explaining why there's monkeys in the New World. And then another thing, they've always told us that species can't combine to make new species, which there are species today that prove that that's absolutely false. In the Americas, there are 2 different types of howler monkeys. And actually, they have different numbers of chromosomes. But in the intermediate area in the forest, there is a third new hybrid species that has a new number of chromosomes, and it's a hybrid species that's neither accepted by either species of howler monkey. And, you know, beyond that, their silly story of even how the New World monkeys got there is that, you know, there was some storm somewhere and they floated on a raft of trees and there was enough food for them to get across the Atlantic Ocean over there, which is obviously nonsense. And these are the same people that tell you that human beings couldn't have sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to arrive in the New World pre-Columbian times, which is obviously silly.
But monkeys could do it in the open, exposed to the elements.
Yeah, right. And then not only that, all of the modern human species are not found in Africa. I mean, they are if you include the Middle East right there, but Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon are relatively just, they're found in the upper areas. So the idea that there was primates, apes, monkeys all over the world, you know, it really expands when you realize how much land we lost after the Hunger Dryas. I mean, we're talking 400 feet of what used to be above the ocean land where people could have lived all over the place. And really, when you get into that, Cro-Magnon seems to have stepped right out of the Atlantic Ocean at some time about 35,000 years ago. Because before that, we don't see any evidence of Cro-Magnon around. But, you know, we have stories of the Berber people and then you have the Basque people in Spain that both say that they came from Atlantis. And then you also have the pyramids and the Ganch people that lived in the Canary Islands there that make pyramids. And these were a completely Cro-Magnon descended man that lived there. The Spanish came in and wiped them out. And they had just been sitting there out in the ocean off the coast of Africa all this time where people were moving around, having empires, doing all this stuff, and they were just left alone out there. And don't you find that bizarre that they're so close? And then, you know, for a long time, they thought that the Berber people actually migrated from Europe. But genetic studies say they're an indigenous people to Africa. They just live there. These are the people that live right north of the Eye of Africa. And, you know, a lot of people argue that that may or may not be the site of Atlantis. However, I personally believe that it would be out in the Azores because of the way that civilization unfolded and where people moved from there. And then plus, you know, you had Plato talking about ancient books in his time, talking about the exact same thing. Something happened there at the end of the Hunger Dryas, but when you think about all the places that man could have lived, right? And now there's mammoth, sloth bones, pendants that were created by human beings now dated 35,000 years ago in South America. I mean, this throws everything on their head. And just a few short years ago, even here where I live, at White Sands, they had to redo the whole timeline of their supposed story of people coming over the Bering Strait and being locked in by an ice wall, and then they got let loose. And, you know, we know all of that's not true now because there are footprints out here at White Sands, New Mexico, right next to giant sloth that are completely human being. And those are originally dated when they first said it at 35, but they kind of rolled it back to 25 to 27. But either way, 10,000 years before the supposed ice blockade was opened up and melted. So we know the history of not only civilization all over the planet is on its head, and they didn't tell us the right story, but evolution itself and where species come from and why they disappeared. So, you know, these are the people with the keys to the kingdom today. You can go back to the Library of Alexandria and kind of follow the power from there. I don't know if you know who Jim Mars is. He was a researcher that really looked into following the power. And you can go back to ancient times and just watch the power continually go westward, and everywhere it goes, an obelisk is put up. And he points out that these obelisks were put up over time with the powers of the world until we come to today where you have the United States, but it always goes west. And now there's only one thing west of the United States that has any potential to raise a obelisk and become the world's new center of power, and that's China, if I'm correct.
Oh, you got good geography, man. So the monkeys, you know, it gives credence to some sort of cataclysmic event because monkeys did not build some sort of raft. They were probably in some sort of cataclysm, and suddenly, there's a bunch of debris, and they just are clinging for dear life onto that thing, and then whatever currents took them over. That's the only possible way that would be, because the monkeys aren't going to plan to get on some sort of thing in the open elements and just like, hey, because if they had enough food, it seems like the forest was ripped apart and floated out to sea in kind of one lump sum there. And going over to China, they have pyramids in China. I went out to a place called Shenyang, which is the oldest capital. You talk about the Emperor Qin from the Qin dynasty, the very first emperor, Emperor Qin. The capital was not in Xi'an. Later it was, but the original capital was a little bit further away. And if you go out there, there's all these pyramids across China. Western China, I should say, in Shenyang. That was the old, very first original capital with Qin. And if you go over there, okay, you can go see the terracotta warriors, and that's where the tomb of Emperor Qin is. But if you head west, again, since you were mentioning west, there are at least 200 pyramids. Earthen pyramids, they look very similar to what you would see in Central America. Definitely not the type in Egypt. Central American flat top pyramids. I went out there, traveled around for a couple of weeks. I was super fascinated by this. I hired a guide, went out all over the place. And this is like 2005 or 6. There really wasn't like a lot of people doing it. There weren't ropes anywhere. I remember the one that we went to that was pretty frequently visited because it was near a town. It was near Xi'an. There were just only one side where you pulled up off the main road, said, don't climb on this unless you follow the track up. But anywhere else you went to any of them, there was no guards. It was just, you're driving along and you're like, whoa, there's another pyramid out there. Just go up this just road and then climb up. They're everywhere. And what was cool is each little town near those pyramids, it could have been like a little tiny burg, comparatively. They all had a museum of what was excavated from each of those. And one thing that seemed to be real common was these type of mirrors that were polished, different types of metals, but on the back was all intricate and what, almost indecipherable old Chinese character written in the Shu style. But then on the front was all polished. And I'm telling you, the amount of artifacts coming out of these things is staggering, and they're just so exquisite. And you look at this and you go, wow, you're telling me like 2,800 years ago, metallurgy was at this level? Of things that are almost impossible to recreate today. And Western China, if you had a chance to go out there, I would highly suggest anybody that's interested in those pyramids to go to Xi'an first, which is cool anyway. The wall around that city, you might think, oh, we're going to go walk around the wall for the day. It would be real cool. You need a bicycle. There's no way you're going to walk around that wall for the day. Such a vast, massive, sheesh. When you look at this, like just even walking around the city wall of Xi'an, it blows your mind, the scale of this thing. And we're supposed to believe that some thousands of years ago, a few people put it together with some bricks and they're cool. They were just rice farmers trying to protect a city. This thing is 3 miles on each side. I'm like, come on, man. You're talking square miles inside the city that was supposed to be just a bunch of rice farmers protecting it. And the stories of ancient China also, the emperors derived their powers from the dragon, from the heavens, which goes right back into the black dragon, the white dragon, these whole types of myths. They're just like accepted stories of creation and power, passage, emperors, controllers, the mandates from heaven, which reference Berkey currents and the disruption in that and the disruption in food supply. And when that emperor couldn't feed the people, then that, that mandate that person could rule the country was revoked. And that's the reason they follow the Berkey currents so heavily in the Beidou Qixing, which is the cult of the Big Dipper. It still exists today as we speak. Now in Japan, it's the cult of the fox. Which now, if you go up there and you're looking around celestially, you don't really see any fox as we consider a fox in the constellation. You have to go further back, and then it's two different constellations that create a fox. It's kind of a hidden knowledge thing. But that's out of Japan. So wherever you go in this ancient history in the past, 2,500, 3,000 years prior, there was something to that we have completely erased in our modern age, substituted, that they had no, they were basically just living in straw huts and, barely getting by. But I can attest to you the absolute stunning artifacts that were in China that are in the museums that just come out of any pyramid. You might think, well, you could say, well, David, they faked it. They have modern techniques and they faked it. I went some real time, I speak some Chinese, and I went to some real small towns because me and a group of people, that's what we did. We spoke some Chinese and everybody had different levels. Some dudes blew me away out of the water, but, we all teamed up and everybody was like, hey, we're going to meet here. We're going to go here and let's go do it. So we go to the most remotest places. Everybody could read the maps. You could talk to anybody in the countryside. You can arrange a place to stay. You can always get food. And it was just like we went to the most craziest places, even what they call Tulo, way over in Xiamen area, which is like the round earth houses out there. And, hardly anybody could go there unless you spoke Chinese to get out to the villages, because there's all those little tiny paths at that point. You're like walking village to village and thing. Like you had to speak some Chinese to get around to these areas, but to get out to those pyramids out west, I highly encourage anybody, because you can get an English-speaking guide now out there. So please get out to Xi'an, check it out if you still can. Yuanyang is the original capital, and everywhere you look, man, there's pyramids. And then we didn't have a chance to get to the ones that were really far west, which I really wanted to see out there, because those were the furthest west pyramids. And then you come into, you start to get into the stands, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. After that tapers off out there. You come to the mountains, basically, and then it ends, and then you're in Tibet, right? So anyway, I thought I'd throw that out there to you, because there's definitely missing pieces of history. And also, I might add one last thing here. Like around Xi'an, I loved museum hopping, so I went into a few museums, and if you know anything about more ancient of the Chinese historical legends, or what the gene editing was a thing, because you go into these temples and they have these life-size statues in there, a human, but it would have a full rabbit head in the robes of a monk with the human hands. There was like all these crossbreedings of humans with animals, or it might have what was going to like a monitor, some kind of legs from a horse with a human face on it. But they had like 24 different combinations of this. So if you use search engine and look at some of the museums around Xi'an, the amount and staggering just in your face of gene editing some multi-thousands of years ago, 4,000 years ago, is there for you to see if you have eyes to know what you're looking at. And I'm glad I took a lot of photos. I should probably go through some of those, because I listed my photos pretty well when I was cataloging them, all digital. But anyway, Ransom, man, I'll leave it back to you.
Yeah, it's a trip. A lot of those pyramids. Matter of fact, I recently was looking at all kinds of them. They've covered up so many of them. And actually, like even Westerners that are tripping on the idea of the pyramids, because, they found some stuff in there that the Chinese government doesn't actually like, as far as archaeological, about the migrations of people 5,000 years ago. But
the redheads, get out of those tombs.
Yeah, well, they found a bunch of 6 foot tall blondies from Europe, and they're not supposed to be there. But it's not really that far fetched when you consider the Ainu people of Japan, which the Japanese government for a long time considered a lost Caucasoid race. And, recent genetic testing came to find out that even though the newer Chinese phenotype just basically acquired the history and took it on as a self-identity about the shogun and everything. Genetic testing showing that the Ainu were actually the people that were the samurai and stuff there. So they're looking at things in a new way there. And now people are starting to talk about, why does everyone have false histories? But yeah, if you look all over China, you will find these pyramids, and they're just hidden. They build pyramid type buildings next to them. I was looking all over the place on Google Earth, and I counted up 50, 60 of them in just one area. And why would the government want to cover that up, and pretend like it doesn't exist is a question I've always had. I mean, they're the leading paleontologists and other stuff because, there's a lot of fossils in history in China that you can't find anywhere else. And there are some spots in China, like there's a cave, for instance, that no one knows how it was made. It's just carved out with some kind of technology. It's just awesome in there. And, they don't mind showing stuff kind of as a tourist attraction. But for some reason, when it comes to the pyramids, they want to cover them up and make them look like hills in different places. So I don't understand that. But the same could be said everywhere else. You would think that if the governments of the world and the academic groups would want to know what actually happened instead of, support theories that are old and kind of been indoctrinated into the fields, you would think we'd be digging up stuff like Pumapunku and different stuff because there is no attempt to really dig up stuff at any pace where mankind can learn anything from the past that will be relevant. Now, they leak out information from time to time, but they never seem to be serious about talking about the various places possibly humans came from or their origins, because, they're ready for a whole new educational system. And we know that from the bizarro world of 2 + 2 can equal 5. But if you don't think it can, you can be racist. Now, this is a real idea. And what's so bizarre about it is, we made movies about this. We joked about it. I recently made a music video about the obsolete man. And in that, he wasn't obsolete in the technological sense or the biological sense. He was obsolete because he could read. He read books and had ideas. He had ideas. So in a future where the state became the only authority and the state, decided there is no God, or, I don't know how people feel about, but just the idea of the state telling you what is facts when those facts are the opinion nature of existence. There may be the obsolete man and we may be it. And, we talk about all these subjects, but what's clear is that these companies and the billionaires behind them, the elite, the people we like to joke about, the Klaus Schwabs of the world, they have a plan. And they're really open about the plan. People like Bill Gates, they want to tinker with DNA. They want to tinker with it. They want to create their own people that are in the image and the likeness of them or whatever they designed. Now, I don't know what you call that, but that is a artificial God complex, and that's where the technocrats are, and they're not even hiding it from us. I mean, you just listen to them. They want to go under our skin. They tell us that we're completely programmable beings now. So this is the trend. Whether it's whether they can get away with it or not is really the question. The question is not, are they planning these things? They are. They're open about it, and they tell us about it.
Yeah, check out the link I sent you from Sanxing Dui and the different parts of history that have also been lost or purposely buried. I mean, you find a complete different species that just comes out of nowhere, advanced metallurgy, art, science, engineering, mathematics, and then poof, it just disappears 1,200 years later. Like, these are things that are in the Chinese record that, it's just, you can go up to Sanxing Dui, but outside of that, you're not going to see it, hear about it. It's not widely talked about. It's just if you're in that area of Sichuan, then you'll go see it, and that's about it. I mean, even the Chinese, they're proud of their history, and I understand that, thousands of years. But these ancient bronzes that make no sense, completely out of place artifacts, And yeah, they only show you just the most simplistic of the stuff that's actually found in these burial sites or in these previous civilizations. Like the thing about Sanqing Dui is it was not Chinese. It was in the area of China, but they don't have any references to the emperor there, what kind of structure of societal rulership was there, what monies they were using. They just didn't find anything. It's a fully intact society, popped in for 1,200 years and then just left. But it wasn't controlled by China. Like there was no homage for this. Nobody was, creating homage and dowries and these sort of things to pay the emperor. There was nothing. It was completely outside of Chinese control. So that's why it's sort of there, but it's sort of not. And you have to know it's there because they're not going to be blasting it all over. They want you to go to Beijing because that was the seat. They want you to go to Nanjing because that was the seat. They want you to stay in Xi'an, not really go to Yuanyang because then sort of the timeline gets a little murky and a little smoky over there. But these places and another thing, when I was living there, I was told, why I was like, why is there not too many science fiction movies and except for Avatar, which got banned after a while because so many people were seeing Avatar that nobody else was seeing any other Chinese produced movies there. I mean, like 99% of the movie gross revenue was going into Avatar, the first one. So they ended up banning that and then say, hey, you had to go see, these Chinese producer made movies. But the whole thing is, why are they afraid of science fiction? Because it shows there could be a breakaway civilization if a bunch of Chinese get on a ship and then go to like Mars, for example. The Chinese government's not on Mars. Hence the reason that you don't see too many off-planet, out of outer space kind of Chinese movies because the Chinese government's not there to rule over the people. So they don't even want you to get the idea that there could be a place where there's no Chinese government ruling the people. And I thought, wow, that's all I could say after that. Because, you live there and you can watch TV or, see stuff. It's just always the same, like ancient history shows, more about, like gods and kings and deities and emperors and, mythical things like crouching tiger, hidden dragon, ninja stuff all over the place. People jump through the trees, bamboo kind of stuff is everywhere. And East meets West and Travel West, there's all these shows about going out to the deserts and all these things. Okay, I get it. But there was never science fiction shows on. And that's the reason I asked the question, like, don't y'all ever do science fiction? Nope, not allowed. And that really drives it home. Like they can't let you have a place where there's no Chinese government to oversee the people. And I thought, wow. And that's really why I would encourage anybody out there to go to like the top 25. No, top 10. Like most people are going to go to China. They're going to go top 10 tourist destinations in China. You're not going to find Sanqing Dui in that top list because it was never controlled by an emperor. It was outside of Chinese control. It was his own civilization, like just as much as the Mayans popped in and then boom, they popped back out again with like they disappeared. This is exactly 2.0 Mayans. For me, I think that would be very similar, perhaps related, because the timeline is exactly, it's pretty similar here. They were 1,200 years ago or 1,100 years BCE. So minus 2,000, like 3,100, 3,500 years ago. Think about the Mayans 3,500 years ago versus 1,200 years ago. Same, but different. So anyway, Ransom, I thought I would leave it there with you on a science fiction note. Plus those images are startling, huh? The Sanqing Dui Museum with all the gold masks and stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing, but it just demonstrates that no matter which empire takes over, they try to erase the one that was before. That's funny because the biggest pyramid of the world in Mexico, a lot of people don't even know it. It's like halfway still covered in sediment and there's a church on top of it. So it'll never be, really excavated. And it's so bizarre that they had this weird idea about keeping the timeline of man kind of to the recent past, even before like stuff like these ideas of out of Africa or any of the history ideas about how long people have been doing stuff. They already had that kind of concept. When the Spanish rolled into the New World, I mean, they went to all these places like in Peru and all in South America and Central America and in Mexico. And, a lot of people don't even know this, but they think of that big pyramid. And I'm showing everybody some more of these pyramids. And this is another phenomenon that I bring up a lot. So most of the time, pyramids are based on true north, the cardinal directions. And here's some pyramids in China. And here's these ones. And they pretty much are lined up perfectly with north and south. But if you go a little bit to the west over here, there's another set of pyramids in a different shape, but they're tilted just a little bit. And most likely these are older pyramids. And you find this even in North America with some of the earthworks geoglyphs up there in Idaho, where the older ones are not tilted right with north, south, east, and west. And the Spanish found the same thing when they rolled into South America and they looked at places like Tiwanaku. So for some reason, everything was orientated to a different direction, insinuating that the earth was tilted quite a bit in a different direction. And then people started building new monuments after the correction or after the earth moved back into order, or for some other reason, maybe it was something that they were basing on magnetics. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the magnetics of the planet was off, and that's why they built these tilted in the wrong way. But you also find that when you look at Göbekli Tepe and some of the Minoan buildings were slightly twisted over time to, recalibrate with the ecliptic, I guess. I mean, we're assuming that, but you just imagine why the world governments all the way into recent antiquity were trying to cover up the fact that there were pyramid builders and megalithic builders all over the planet doing something long before they're trying to say people were just Stone Age people. And, there's a lot of people that argue, well, there couldn't have been technology back then because they were all Stone Age people. And I put to you right now, today, there are Stone Age people living right next to technologically advanced people all over the world. You could pick the Amazon, for example. There's places all over India and Southeast Asia where there are tribes that are either still practicing Stone Age techniques or, in the case of a few, they still haven't been contacted and don't want to contact modern man. And then that also brings into question something. There's a group of what are seemingly African Americans off the coast of India. I mean, not African Americans, excuse me, Africans. They're of the black phenotype, but they are Stone Age people that seem to have been living there undisturbed, undiscovered for God knows how long. And then you have to wonder, were they originally from there? And that would be in India, not in Africa, but yet there they are. And every attempt to, contact, it's illegal to try to contact them, but people try to do that. And, they don't want to be contacted. They'll kill you and eat you with, and it's really bizarre because there's similar things going on in the Amazon, almost like they have an instinct to not involve themselves with technological civilizations. It may not be the first time in their genetic memory where it's happened. And then you were talking about the dragons. Wouldn't everybody just poop their pants if a bunch of dragons landed and people walked out of them? And there's your Kukulkan, there's your Golden Emperor, there's the people that gave the medal to the ancient shogun seem to have come in some kind of device. There's even, stories of literally like flying saucers coming out of the ocean in Japan and teaching them different things. So no matter where you go in the earth, there's one thing you can't argue is there's stories of gods, aliens, entities, something coming down from the sky at least, if not the heavens, and coming down and teaching mankind in various places at different times how to build, mathematics, sacred geometry, how to farm. And we just see this, and now it seems like, we're about to reset. And is that how it's going to appear to the settlements of human beings after some kind of cataclysm when people show up with Apache helicopters and Harrier jets and things like that, AI drones flying overhead? What will the people that haven't seen civilization think about those things?
Yeah, it's interesting you said no contact. Because if you do listen to elders that talk about the Sasquatch civilization, They are very adverse to anything contact with humanity or humans because they probably have lived through some of the same. Even if you believe in Atlantis, those of you out there, that's only 30,000 years prior. Apparently elders who are communicating or have communicated with what you consider the Sasquatch civilization, the forest people, the first peoples, their lineage goes back millions, plural, of years, millions. So even if you go back to Lemuria, which is 80,000 years prior, or you talk about, if you want to go to Indian Vedic texts in the Bhagavad Gita and many, the Vimana and flying craft, we can go back hundreds of thousands of years in human history of what we consider Homo sapien. Still, they remain unwilling and unwanting to touch humans or have contact with them. If you're able to see one, most times you're terrified because they don't want you there either. They're trying to scare you out of there. They're not going to harm you, but they're going to scare you to where you think you might be harmed. If you're lucky enough to glimpse one and not be terrified, perhaps you'll be tagged and you'll see another one somewhere else. They live in the forest with us at all times. They're around us at all times. They're so far advanced in terms of speed, ability to affect the human mind, and that's one thing that goes with almost every single encounter is those beings are able to affect the minds of humans. Because I don't know how many stories I've heard of people like, they'll take a look at a photo, there's something in, they're like, I was standing there, I didn't see a thing, didn't hear a thing, and I can't believe this thing was standing right next to me or right behind me or this. The masters of the environment, and somebody was saying, well, they were trying to herd the humans down the path, and I heard this other guy was like, dude, that's like trying to herd turtles. Like, why would you do? They're so fun. That's exactly, think about a human as being a turtle in the forest. And us compared to a turtle, that's the equivalent of the first peoples to what we are as a human being. Really that fast, that adept, that stealthy, that interdimensional between rifts of what is and what isn't. I mean, once you realize they're there and you really know they're there for sure, and you're 1,000% certain that they live next to you, with you, around you, your world changes to, oh, maybe that sound was that sound that I heard. Maybe what I thought I saw zoom out of the side of my eye was something at full speed blazing past me that I thought was just like a blur of light, but it really was. If you live around the forest, and if you know anybody in the native community, in the First Peoples community, they're with you, they're here, they're all around. So that's what I'm saying, like these timelines that were understood where we get plugged into or not, how we're gaslit of what is. We're not even remotely near the apex of this planet's inhabitants. And I'm really curious, if we had some sort of grid down for 2 generations, that we really came back to an 1860s pioneering lifestyle. Nobody ever saw one airplane ever. And, 50 years had elapsed. And suddenly these things pop out of the ground and an Apache helicopter. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine somebody in the 1860s that had never, and then suddenly like a flying contraption comes in and just lands in front of them like a helicopter? It would be the exact same thing, but I think we're at the electrogravitics now where you'd actually see a UFO laying in front of you. So anyway, take us out, Ransom. I'm kind of rambling now, man. There's so many things that are about to change in our world. Please get prepared for financial changes. This whole oil embargo, when it comes, you're going to have minutes or hours to get to the petrol station to get petrol. So if you see it on the news that an oil embargo has started, you really just have hours or minutes to get to the closest petrol station. fill up whatever you can, and what you got is what you're going to get. Because at that point, you either have precious metals or you got nothing.
I got bags of beans. No, actually, if you saw that, that's a good time to not only stock up on water, but seriously, like dried beans, rice, and stuff. And you know, when the shortages of toilet papers and things started last time, I thought it was really funny because, you know, we usually have enough to worry about our existence. You know, and while you were talking, I was just kind of scrolling through these cities in China, and they're literally pockmarked with ancient stuff that is being covered up. And so that just shows you that you can't even believe history. What makes you think that you could believe things with your eyes now, knowing that technology has exceeded our perception of reality? I mean, even if you did see an alien, like I've said before, how do you know that some government or some lab didn't just create that for some kind of, you know, ruse? And would you be willing to give up your rights, your weapons, your freedom of speech, your food, your travel, and all of these things for any number of these scenarios that they could pull on you? The collapse of the dollar, another, you know, major war that they make everyone participate in, and then we have to start rationing, and, you know, gas lines. Are we ready for that? I don't know. I know some of us are because we've been paying attention.
Will I give it up? No, absolutely not. Because look back through history, every time people give up for the greater good for others, they're not with us anymore. The only people who survived are the ones who went around the roadblocks. Cash your goods carefully. Until next week, DuByne, Ransom Godwin signing off.
Thank you for listening to Revolution